The Olympus MJU is a camera that lives in its big brother's shadow. The Olympus MJU 2 is a well-known 35mm point and shoot camera. The sleek design and the images that it's able to produce have rightfully given it extreme popularity. Although being so popular now means that it's carrying a hefty price tag. If you want one that's tested and in decent condition, then you're looking at around £250 plus. You're not going to find it anywhere less than £200. But that is just a ridiculous price to pay for a point and shoot. But this is where its predecessor comes in, the Olympus MJU, or the Olympus MJU 1 if you want to call it that. From what I can tell, the Olympus MJU is almost identical to the Olympus MJU 2, apart from the aperture. The Olympus MJU has an aperture of 3.5, whereas the Olympus MJU 2 has an aperture of 2.8. But in my opinion, that isn't a big deal. If a point and shoot gets to the point where it needs that extra stop of light, then it's just going to use the flash. And you can turn the flash off, so I guess that's what that extra stop of light is useful for, but realistically, you're not going to use it that often. But it also doesn't help that you can't choose the aperture on the Olympus MJUs. So realistically, why would you want the Olympus MJU 2 over the Olympus MJU when you have to pay like a triple or quadruple the price and you can't even change the aperture? But I'm going to give you a few likes and dislikes about the Olympus MJU, and then you can decide which one you would want to get, the Olympus MJU or the Olympus MJU 2. So I'll first talk about the design. It's sleek, compact and pocketable. The looks of a camera shouldn't be the only reason you buy a camera, but I do believe that it should be one reason to buy a camera. Since from my experience, I don't really enjoy using cameras that I don't like the look of. They may function amazing and have some great features, but if I don't like the look of it, then I'm most likely not going to use it, or at least enjoy using it. The camera is also extremely compact, meaning that there's only a few buttons on there, which means that it's really easy to use. Anyone can just pick up this camera and use it, hence the name point and shoot. Being so compact, it's also really small and easily pocketable, which means you can just take it anywhere with you. And I'll now talk about the durability. It has a clamshell design, which means the lens is protected whenever you are not using it. This is really good on a point and shoot since you're most likely going to be throwing it in a bag or in your pocket and just taking it with you places. And you don't want that lens to be scratched up while in the bag or in your pocket. I'm pretty sure the Olympus MJU is also weather sealed, which is really handy, especially here in England. I've also taken this camera on nights out and dropped it accidentally, and also had other people spill their drinks on it, and it still managed to function correctly. Although that was with the clamshell design closed, if it was open, I think it would probably break. But that's because it's only made out of plastic, and it fell from like my waist height, which is a few feet. The third like or pro is going to be the autofocus. While it's not the best autofocus in the world, it's pretty good for a 90s point and shoot. It's fast and accurate, which means you can use it in situations where there's a lot of movement and you will most of the time get the image in focus. There is the occasional situation where the image will be out of focus, but it's not going to be drastically out of focus. It's not going to be focusing to infinity when someone's like a few feet in front of you. It will just slightly miss focus. But if you have the flash on, then it's most likely going to nail focus every time. The lens is also pretty sharp. It's not amazing, but it's good for a point and shoot. You can get some pretty sharp images out of it when you use the flash and when the autofocus is bang on. It creates images like you're never going to see in any other point and shoot, apart from probably more Olympus ones, but that's because Olympus were just so amazing at making point and shoots. Every single one I've used has been just quality. The lens is also a prime lens, which means you get a shallower aperture than other point and shoots with zoom lenses. You do sacrifice the zoom, but to be honest, I think it's worth having prime lenses every day of the week. It's pretty much all I shoot on since I like shallower apertures, and they're also usually just built a little bit better. But yeah, the lens has an f3.5 aperture, and while it's not as low as the Olympus MJU 2, which is a 2.8 like I said before, it's more than enough on a point and shoot where you can't even control the aperture. Like, why would you want a 2.8 when you've got a 3.5? Because the camera's going to want to turn the flash on anyway if you get to the point of having to use that 2.8 aperture. The camera is also just really convenient. This ties in with the other likes, but it just makes sense to put this as its own category. You can really just take it anywhere with you and use it in any situation. It's just amazing for nights out, parties, family stuff, or just everyday stuff. It's the perfect everyday pocket camera. And it's the first thing I think of whenever I want to get photos on a night out, especially press awards at university. The past 2 years, I've brought it with me to press awards and got some great photos. And I plan to do so for the next year. And the last like or pro is that the camera is fun. It's just really fun to use and you'll have a blast using it. Point and shoots are just fun and easy to use, and I think that's the best part about them. anyone could just pick them up and have an enjoyable experience. Anyway, let's get on to the dislikes. The first one is the price. While it's nowhere near as expensive as the Olympus MJU, it definitely does have a bit of a hefty price tag when you're considering that it's a 90s point and shoot. You can get it from like £60 to £120 depending on the condition. You can get it for cheaper if it's untested, but realistically I'd say just go for one that's tested so you know that it's working. Unless you're feeling a bit risky and want to gamble on one and see if you can get a good price for it. I think I got mine for £60 to £70. I thought it was 40 for a long time, but then I checked and I remember it being more than 40, but I don't actually remember how much I got it for. I think it was around the £60 mark. But that was a few years ago and it was in really good condition, so I reckon if you found the same one now, then it'll be more like £90 to £100, which isn't great when you're considering it's a point and shoot, but it's basically the same as the Olympus MJU, and you're having to pay, you know, half the price for it if you get an untested Olympus MJU, or a third of the price if you're getting a tested one in good condition. And the next dislike or con is that the corner of the images isn't exactly sharp, but to be honest, it's not really that much of a dislike because it is just, you know, a point and shoot, and what do you really expect? It's not the best lens in the world. You're going to get some softness. And I don't think there is a point and shoot out there that has super sharp corners, so this is really just the same for any point and shoot since it is cheaply made. But that is it for the dislikes. There's only those two. I sat here for quite a while writing down likes and dislikes, and those were the only two dislikes that I could think of. And that just shows you how great this camera is. This camera is honestly amazing, and I think everyone needs one, or just a point and shoot in general. Everyone should have a 35mm point and shoot, or even a digicam, to be honest. They're just so useful. They're just so versatile, and you'll take photos in situations that you didn't really think of taking photos before. Yes, you could use your phone, but it just doesn't feel the same as using a point and shoot. Using a point and shoot feels more in the moment, and you get that excitement of waiting for them to be developed. And when you get your images and you get them scanned or you scan them yourself, you look back on those images and you're just happy about those memories that you have captured. And that is one thing about 35mm point and shoots that I really like. I grew up looking at those 35mm disposable point and shoot photos that my parents took, and it's really nostalgic seeing them. Seeing me as a kid, seeing my mum in her 20s, seeing my sister really young as well, just seeing like my old pets, it's really nostalgic. And using the Olympus MJU or just any point and shoot in general reminds me of that. I feel like I'm creating memories that I can look back on in however many years, and it's just such a nice feeling. One day I might even show my own kids in like 10 years, 15 years in the future. Anyway, that is the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed. Don't forget to check out my next video and also check out my previous video. Goodbye.